Nobody in this room, or rather in this world, knows more about RevitaBlu than this person, as he was instrumental in the creation of this amazing product here at Jeunesse. He also authored many articles in stem cell research, as well as the best-selling book, Cracking the Stem Cells Code. And here to share with you more about RevitaBlu and what it's all about and how it could change your whole entire body and health. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Jeunesse Scientific Advisory Board member, Drapeau.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be back in Malaysia. I've been here many times. I feel like I'm becoming Malaysian. I'm even starting to like durian a lot. I want to start by echo two things that Chris Cooper said yesterday. He talked about how the reason why we have RevitaBlu is because of his inspiration and his perseverance to really bring RevitaBlu and insist that this is a product we should have, and it was launched here in Malaysia. So big hand for Chris. Thank you, Chris. And I also want to echo something that Chris mentioned also yesterday. I've been in, and it happened that way. It's not something I chose, although I'm very proud of it, but I've been in the network marketing industry for 25 years. I've always been on the corporate side. I have seen all the mistakes that companies can do. I have seen all the good things that companies can do. I've seen the ingredients that are needed to be successful in this business. And Jeunesse has literally all the ingredients to be a successful business. I mean, the proof is its success. So I just want to echo what Chris was saying. You are at the right place and at the right time with the right company. So you can really make it with Jeunesse. So I'm honored to be part of it. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about RevitaBlu. RevitaBlu is all about stem cells. To understand why RevitaBlu is good for you, we need to have somewhat of a general understanding of what stem cells are, what they do in the body. And once we understand this, you will understand that RevitaBlu really acts at the core of human health. When you go into magazines, on the internet, on TV, and you read or you hear about stem cells, most of the time we talk about taking stem cells from a source, which can be an umbilical cord, it can be the bone marrow, it can be your bloodstream, it can be fat tissue. You've all heard about stem cells with these different sources. Then in the lab, we manipulate these stem cells, we culture them, expand them, and then we re-inject them in the bloodstream. So all we do really is that we increase the number of stem cells in the bloodstream through an injection. But the thing that we never talk about is that these stem cells that are isolated from the bone marrow, from the blood, or from the fat tissue, well, they are right now in your body as you're sitting right now in your chair. They've been there since the day you're born. So if they have such an amazing potential for regeneration by simply putting them into the bloodstream, then what are they doing naturally into your body? And that, I think, is the key aspect. When we understand what stem cells are really doing in the body, then we understand that it's giving us a leverage. It's giving us a new way to really tap into optimal stem cells. Okay, I started this a little too early. Okay. So, for me, all of this started in the early 2000s. Around 2001, I had been told, like any scientist, any med students, stem cells from the bone marrow, what they do in the body is that they become red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. They are precursors to blood cells, and that's all they do. So in this environment, in 2001, a friend of mine sent me an article, and the title of the article was Turning Blood into Brain. It was a study in which scientists observed stem cells from the bone marrow moving into the brain and becoming functional brain cells. Now this is a huge breakthrough. This is like taking a cat, sprinkling some magical powder, and it becomes a horse. That's what it means in science. And then soon after, other papers, scientific articles describing how stem cells could become heart cells and liver cells. So with that information, it started to really how could I say, pull my chain and challenge all the notions that we had about medicine. And so I published an article with a colleague of mine based on a lot of information available at the time that simply suggested, it was published in a journal called Medical Hypotheses, suggesting that stem cells from the bone marrow actually constitute the natural repair system of the body. It was just an idea. It was breakthrough. Just to give you an example, 10, 12 years ago, I was lecturing about this whole topic, and at one point there was a doctor in the room, and he stood up and he said, "Can I tell you something that apparently nobody is telling you?" He said, "Let me just tell you, you're just an idiot." And it just gives you an idea of how novel this idea was back then. But now let's fast forward 15 years later, and it is something that is very, very well accepted in the world of medicine. Stem cells do constitute your natural repair and renewal system. And here's a little bit how it works. Anytime there is a problem somewhere in your body, it can be a cut, it can be a bigger problem like a heart attack, it doesn't matter. Anything is happening in the body, the affected tissue will release compounds that are very well known today. These compounds will reach the bone marrow and they will essentially dislodge, make stem cells detach from the bone marrow environment, and then the stem cells will reach the general blood circulation. So within about 3 to 5 days after an injury, the number of stem cells increases in the bloodstream anywhere between 3 to 10 folds. Now, as stem cells are circulating everywhere in the body, they don't know where to go. So they circulate everywhere, and the way for them to identify where to go into the body is that the affected tissue, starting on the second day and the third day, will start to secrete other compounds that will attract stem cells to that tissue. So stem cells are circulating everywhere in the body, but when they flow into the fine capillaries, the fine blood vessels, where the tissue has the injury, these molecules, seen here in the video in green, these molecules will touch stem cells, and that will trigger the whole process of migration out of the blood into the tissue. And in the tissue, the stem cell will crawl to the site of the injury, and upon contact with cellular debris of that tissue, the stem cells will multiply and become cells of that tissue. Isn't that a beautiful process? It is your natural repair process. So think of it this way. Just like when you cut yourself and you have an infection, the bacteria gets into the cut and it's a little bit sensitive, you have a little bit of pain, then what happens is that a signal is sent to your lymph node to release immune cells. They will go everywhere in the body, but specifically they will migrate into the wound. They will go right beside the bacteria and they will kill the bacteria. This is a very well orchestrated phenomenon. Then we call this your immune system. We have the same thing here, and we call this your repair system. And in this whole process, the various steps are the release of stem cells from the bone marrow, the circulation of stem cells in the bloodstream, the migration of stem cells into the tissue, and then in the tissue they will proliferate, multiply, and then become cells of that tissue. Now in this whole process, the part that has been the most studied, and that's the one that we can talk about, is the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. Simply because in science we have tools to trigger that aspect, the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. So what has been studied the most is the link between how many stem cells we have in circulation and overall health. Now there are hundreds, if not thousands of studies that have been published on that topic. I won't go obviously through all these studies, but the conclusion of these studies is that more stem cells in circulation means that more stem cells are available to participate in the process of tissue repair. So you need to repair your house, more carpenters in your house will just make your house be rebuilt faster. It's just that simple. Now, so if I go back to that first statement, what it means for your health is that with two people having the same health issue, the one that has more stem cells in circulation is the one that will recover better, faster, and to a greater extent. Now, if you do have a problem, and then you have the ability of putting more stem cells in circulation, then your body will have more stem cells to use in order to use for a tissue repair. And the last one if you've got fewer stem cells in circulation, well, let's put it this way. There's a clear link that has been established between developing health problems or losing your health and having less or fewer stem cells in circulation. So this is the conclusion. But I want to give you a little bit of a picture, something to illustrate these conclusions so that you can see the kinds of studies that have been used to reach these conclusions. These are solid conclusions coming from a lot of science, but I want to show you a few examples. What I'm going to show you is not about RevitaBlu, and I just want this to be clear. I'm just giving you here some information, some education about stem cells and the natural role of stem cells in the body. So what I'm showing here is not about RevitaBlu, it's about newer stem cells. Here's a study that was done by the National Institutes of Health in the United States. Scientists took mice, they triggered a heart attack in mice, then they let the animal recover. They separated the mice in two groups. One group was control, to which nothing was done, and the other group, they injected compounds that are very well known to do exactly what we talked about before, triggering the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. So the only difference is that the experimental group had more stem cells in their bloodstream during the time, well, during 8 to 10 days. When they looked at the animals, 27 days later, you can see in the control group in their heart, fairly severe scar tissue in the ventricular wall, no new blood vessels, and fairly significant heart problems. In the experimental group, all they had was more stem cells in circulation. And we have the renewal of the ventricular wall, new blood vessels tapping into the other ventricules, and quasi-normalized cardiovascular function. So, in the world where nothing can be done to recover from a heart attack, here's a study published in 2001 showing that by putting more stem cells in circulation, you can have a significant impact on tissue repair. Now, I will not go into the detail because it can get complex, but this protocol, as done in these mice, is not directly applicable in humans. So that's why today you don't hear about this in terms of a treatment for humans. But it does show one thing that is very important. If we can't put more stem cells in circulation, the body has the biology, the machinery, it has the capacity of using these stem cells and put them to work for tissue repair. And we can show very, very similar studies touching the brain, touching the pancreas, the lung, the kidneys, similar studies here touching various aspects of human health. Now, the last one, the link between losing health and having fewer stem cells in circulation, this is something that is emerging from the last decade of stem cell research. And it's tied to the general understanding that we have about health. So what I'm summarizing here is the general knowledge that you have about health. We are born, and then at about 25 years or so, we reach peak health, and then after that, it's a slow decline. That's essentially how we look at health, generally speaking. But all this research on stem cells is telling us that this is not what is happening. Health is actually a balance between two phenomena in the body. We don't start with a lot of cells that we lose over time. What happens is that all throughout our lives, we lose cells, and then stem cells are released from the bone marrow to simply replace these cells. Stem cells don't only go where you have an injury. They also go, to a lesser extent, to all the tissues in your body, simply maintaining these tissues. So when we are young, the aspect of tissue repair is stronger, so that's why we tend to be healthier. We repair much faster. And we are healthier. When we age, there's a point in our life, because as we age, we have fewer and fewer stem cells. So we cross a line at some point where we lose more cells than we are replacing. So there's a point where there's a weakness that shows up in the body. Where that weakness will show up in different individuals is a function of different aspects of your life. Your genetics, your past injuries, your exposure to environmental toxins, your lifestyle, your diet, your exposure to stress, your exposure, your ability to rest, your mother-in-law. All of these are aspects that will put pressure on you. and your general ability to withstand all I mean, what I'm telling you here, you know all of this. There's nothing new. The only thing that is new in everything that we're talking about is simply that, given all this pressure applied to you, how many stem cells in your bloodstream is going to be a determining factor. I can make a very simple analogy to understand this. It's a little bit like your bank account. You are not born with a certain amount of money in your bank account, and then you spend it throughout your life until the day where you run out of money, and then you're in trouble. No, you have money coming in your bank account regularly, and you spend that money regularly, and as long as you don't spend more money than your income, you're fine. If one day a problem happens, and you cannot pay your car, or you cannot pay your house, or you cannot pay for your education or your health, then we will say that you have car problem, house problem, education problem, or health problems. But it's not true. You just have money problems. And it shows up in different places. It's the same thing here. You don't have problems with your heart, with your liver, with your... You have stem cell problems. You just don't have enough to sustain the very normal day-to-day need to allow your body to just maintain itself. So if we can just bring back this balance and then have as much renewal as we do cells, then we help the body simply regain its very natural ability to just maintain its own health. That's all we're talking about. The natural ability of the body to stay healthy. Again, we can show this in many studies. I'm going to just use one to just illustrate this whole concept. This is a study where we see people here that went to visit their doctor and complained of problem with erectile function. So, and then we compared, so we counted, or they counted the number of stem cells in the blood circulation of these individuals and compared that with the number of stem cells in the circulation of normal controlled individuals. And we can see that people who complain of erectile function or problems of erectile function had on average a little bit less than half the number of stem cells compared to, in circulation compared to healthy individuals. So in that study, the conclusion of that study was clearly that people who expressed problem with erectile function had, on average, clearly fewer stem cells in circulation. Now you take all these people and then you establish their international index of erectile function and you plot this against the number of stem cells in circulation and you have a straight line. There's a direct link between erectile function and the number of stem cells in circulation. I'm using this example just because I know erectile function is an issue that is not bothering you in your life at all. I could use many examples like this. The same thing applies with overall cardiovascular function, the health of your arteries, the health of your pancreas, your endocrine system, your brain, your joints, every aspect of human health. There is a study that has documented that fewer stem cells in circulation can be linked to some sort of problem linked to this aspect of human health. And go back to the slide that we had before. The explanation here is very simple. It's like your bank account. It's not a heart problem, it's not a brain problem, it's not a liver problem, a pancreatic problem. It is just a stem cell problem. It's a money problem. You just don't have enough stem cells to satisfy the day-to-day need to just maintain your health. So when we understand all of this, then and here's a general graph, if you want to just image this conclusion: more stem cells in circulation, your body is better able to simply regain and maintain its optimal health. So once we know that, the general conclusion of, I tried to make it as simple as I could, and yet as clear as I could, is the message that stem cells are crucial for your body to simply stay healthy. Is that something that is clear?
Yes.
Okay. So once we understand this, we understand that we do need antioxidant, we do need to sleep well, we need exercise, your diet is still important, everything in your life is still important. But at the end of the day, the core aspects of human health, the one thing that if you support that aspect of your body can really change your life is to support the natural ability of your body to renew and repair. Just like the best thing for your immune system is to be able to support your immune system, well, the best thing for your health is to be able to support your health system. So what can we do to increase the number of stem cells in circulation? And here's a short video that will give you a clue.
Sourced from the Tibetan Plateau and the crisp waters of Oregon's Upper Klamath Lake, Jeunesse has developed a patent-pending formula enhanced with blue-green algae, Sea-Buckthorn berry, aloe vera, and coconut water. This botanical beverage mix is designed to help nourish and support your body. Introducing RevitaBlu. Formulated by a pioneer in stem cell research, refreshing RevitaBlu contains 3 legendary plant-based ingredients. Blue-green algae, also known as AFA, of Amazonian flos-aquae, is found and extracted from Oregon's pristine Upper Klamath Lake. Blue-green algae is world-renowned as one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. Harvested from the Tibetan Plateau, Sea-Buckthorn berry is packed with antioxidants and has been used for centuries in Chinese, Mongolian, and Tibetan traditional medicine for longevity and vibrant health. Grown in tropical climates around the globe, aloe vera has been used for almost 6,000 years for its wellness benefits. Taken daily, there is no question RevitaBlu will be the go-to product for your life and lifestyle. RevitaBlu, your best you.
I was not part of the team who developed that tagline, your best you. But I think it's the best way to really summarize what RevitaBlu is, because your stem cells is how your body has maintained its health from the day you're born. If you support this natural ability, you give that chance to your body to be the best that it can. So it's really the best tagline here for your best you. So how all of this started for me, we go back now 15 years ago, this idea that stem cells constitute the natural repair system of the body. The reason why we were so interested in this idea is that I was working with this aquatic botanical called AFA, flos-aquae, and people were reporting a broad variety of health benefits. Benefits touching heart, the lung, pancreas, the skin, joints, so many different aspects that we could not explain how it was working in the body. So when all these stem cell ideas came out, then we went in the lab and we tested, does it have an effect on stem cells? And what we discovered is that that's what it does. Within an hour of consumption, it increases the number of stem cells in circulation, and it comes back to baseline level a few hours later. We know a lot about AFA, and we have talked a lot about AFA over the years simply because it's the first ingredient that I worked with. So we have 15 years of testimonials and stories and scientific development. But it is not the strongest ingredients that we have. The latest one that I worked with is Sea-Buckthorn berry. I asked friends of mine, a number of friends actually, biochemists from China, one day, because it's kind of my strategy here, trying to find plants that have been used locally in different parts of the world that are used for many different aspects of human health. If they're used and reported to have a wide variety of benefits, then possibly the mechanism of action is that it supports the natural role of stem cells. So I asked these friends, I said, okay, you're lost on a desert island, and you can only bring one plant from China. Which one would it be? I was expecting that they would tell me ginseng, or ginkgo, or astragalus, or you know a lot of great plants from Chinese medicine. And all of them told me Sea-Buckthorn berry. And I was very surprised because I did not know this berry for those kinds of applications. So I went to study the scientific literature, and I found really a plethora of studies describing its health benefits. And it starts really with its name. Its name is epophyte, which is very rare in biology to name a plant based on what it does. Most of the time a plant is named on what it looks like, its physical characteristics. Here, Sea-Buckthorn berry was named after Alexander the Great as he was doing his conquest in China, and he was crossing China, and at one point he had a herd of wounded horses, and he left them to die in a field of Sea-Buckthorn. And when he came back a few weeks later, he encountered a herd of healthy and vibrant horse, and they all had a shiny coat, which is a sign of health for horse. So the berry became known as Ipophae, which means horse-like, shining horse. The same thing was reported by Genghis Khan when he did his conquest as well in China, and he told his soldiers to harvest the berry and the leaf so that they can heal and recover like the horses. And from there it went into Tibetan medicine, Mongolian medicine, Chinese medicine. So it's a berry with a lot of local history. So I traveled to Tibet. We went to see various fields of wild growing Sea-Buckthorn. What is interesting here is that even in the scientific literature, Sea-Buckthorn, which is available, when Alexander the Great discovered it, he brought it back to Greece. From Greece it went everywhere in Europe. It's a very common berry, but its biochemistry is very, very different if it grows at sea level or if it grows in a very harsh environment in Tibet. So when it grows in Tibet, it has way more bioactive compounds. So we designed an extract that concentrates a lot of the active compounds found in Sea-Buckthorn, and then we found a decrease in the number of circulating stem cells that is more than AFA, and it's sustained over time. And then the last one that I want to talk about is Beta-Glucan. Because as we did all this research over the years, I told you before that the most important aspect is the number of stem cells in circulation. But this is just because science focuses on the things that it can study. If you want to look at planets, you need a telescope. If you have a microscope, planets don't exist for you. If you want to study bacteria and all you have is a telescope, you can never talk about bacteria. They don't even exist for you. So you can only observe in science things for which you have a tool to manifest them. So far, there's no tool to trigger migration. So there's virtually no studies done on migration. But I can tell you, I saw you in the hall before, I now see you in the room, I did see you cross the door, but I'm pretty sure you crossed the door at some point. So it's pretty clear that if stem cells end up in a tissue, they have to migrate from the blood to the tissue. It's fully documented, but it is an obvious, necessary step in this whole process. So over the years, what I have observed is, although we cannot say much about it, it's pretty clear that any time we include in the formula something that has been documented to also support the migration of stem cells out of the blood into tissue, we get better stories. People get better benefits. So one of these ingredients is Beta-Glucan, which is a complex sugar coming from various plants. Here in RevitaBlu, we use Beta-Glucan coming from oat. And it was documented to support the migration of stem cells out of the blood into the tissue. So you count the number of stem cells in the bloodstream, you give Beta-Glucan, and you see a drop in the number of stem cells. By the way, sometimes people ask, how do you count stem cells in the bloodstream? It's a machine called flow-cytometer. What it does is that you take a blood sample, and when you pass the blood sample through the flow cytometer, all the cells make a line, one cell behind the other. It passes in front of a laser, and as the laser shines onto the cell, the machine can identify what kind of cell it is. So we take a blood sample, we pass it through the flow cytometer, we count how many stem cells, then we give somebody Sea-Buckthorn, AFA, Beta-Glucan, and then we count the number of stem cells an hour later, 2 hours later, 3 hours later. It's really that simple. It's a very sophisticated machine. When we started our research work in Oregon, in the United States, there were 3 flow cytometers in the entire state. We had 2 of them to do our research. And that's what allowed us to really do a lot of breakthrough research in that field. Okay, so here are the key ingredients in RevitaBlu. It's a blend of Sea-Buckthorn and berry extract, AFA, to support this natural release of stem cells from the bone marrow, to put more stem cells in circulation, and Beta-Glucan to support their migration into tissue. And that leads to the kind of benefits, not the claims, but the kind of benefits that you will experience in your life. So it will support, by supporting the natural role of stem cells in the body, it supports your simple, natural renewal system. It provides strong antioxidant protection. You blend these two together, it supports healthy aging. And where it does support a sense of well-being, again, I'm just sharing information here. The claim is not that the product will do this. However, it's been historically known that Sea-Buckthorn berry contains a compound that will affect some neurotransmitter in the brain, and it just makes you feel cool. You just feel happy, you feel joy, you just feel good. So a lot of people taking RevitaBlu say, you know, about 15, 20 minutes later, I just feel like mental energy. It comes from the presence of these compounds. With AFA, we support the release of stem cells from the bone marrow, so the renewal system. We support the immune system. Both of them support healthy aging. And AFA has another compound that does the same thing, that has been known for a long time to modulate the biochemistry of the brain ever so slightly to just make you feel better. And then the Beta-Glucan that supports the migration of stem cells out of the blood into tissues, supports the immune system, which together supports healthy aging. Now, something that is, to me, very interesting with RevitaBlu is that as I started to study the various products in the Jeunesse product line, what was amazing to me is that I don't think I could have found a company that was better prepared and better suited to have a product like RevitaBlu, because the synergy that we find with the different products that we have is quite phenomenal. So let's look at the synergy that we have with Reserve. So I'm showing here this complex picture of the blood circulation. You don't have to understand the detail. It's simply that the blood circulation goes from arteries to arterioles to fine capillaries where we feed cells, and on the other end the blood comes out in veins, goes back to the heart, and it's the whole blood circulation. In this entire blood circulation, when stem cells are circulating in the blood and they're looking for what is the tissue that is in need of repair, there are two things in the body that can reduce the ability of stem cells to identify what part of your body is in need of repair. It is systemic inflammation and oxidative stress. If you have free radicals in your blood circulation, it reduces the ability of stem cells to identify where to go. And that's where Reserve is very, very interesting. By being a strong antioxidant, one of its mechanisms of action for all the benefits that we have seen so far is that it helps stem cells to identify where to go. So it does not do the same thing as RevitaBlu, but it is extremely complementary, because you release stem cells with RevitaBlu, and then Reserve simply allows them to better see where to go in the body. So if you have used RevitaBlu, Reserve in the past, just add RevitaBlu and the benefits that it can bring. They work together in a really fabulous way. The other product with which we have a great synergy is the serum with growth factor. Here's a brief representation of the skin, and it's just there to show that in the skin you have already layers of skin stem cells. Their role is to transform themselves into fibroblasts and other cells of the skin, whose role is going to make collagen, elastin, hyaluronic acid, all the things that your skin needs to be firm, young-looking, plump, to be healthy. You need all these things to be done. It's done by the cells of the skin. When you apply the serum, one of the things that the serum does with its growth factors is that it attracts the stem cells from the blood to migrate into the skin and replenish those skin stem cells. And then when the stem cells migrate in the skin, other growth factors support their multiplication. So you just basically support and amplify the natural machinery of the skin to just stay healthy and look healthy and young. So now couple the two together. You take RevitaBlu, you put more stem cells in circulation, you apply the serum, so you have more stem cells in circulation to attract to the skin, and when more stem cells have migrated in the skin, more stem cells can now multiply in the skin and take part of this machinery, this restructuration of the skin. So it's an amazing, amazing synergy. Yesterday, somebody shared with me that they've been using the serum for a long time, but now that they have started to use RevitaBlu, they can see a difference on their skin. That's exactly the mechanism behind it. So you've used the serum for a long time, add RevitaBlu and pay attention to your skin. Now, when these stem cells, not stem cells, when the skin cells get activated and they start to do what they need to do in the body, in the skin, to restructure the skin, they need the building blocks in the skin. What are the building blocks in order to make collagen, elastin, and all the things that your skin needs? Very unique amino acid that you can find in collagen. So now add Nara to the picture, and now you've got an amazing trio of product that you just have to be careful not to start to look younger than your children. Can create problems. Okay, now let's get into a few of the most common questions, because I don't think we'll have time at the end to get into questions, but after I go through these, I will have answered most of the questions. So far so good?
Yes.
Okay, the first question, if my daughter, father, mother, uncle, grandmother, dog, cat, fish, parrot, whatever, has whatever problem, can RevitaBlu help? The only honest answer, I will tell you, some 15 years ago when I was getting these answers, I was just scratching my head, like trying scientifically to really give the best answer. And I can tell you how many times I told people, I don't see how really that could help. And they would come back a few months later telling me some of the greatest stories. So I have learned that the body is much, much smarter than the brain, and it does things much better than what we know or we don't know. So I'm just going to say, just give it a try. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that RevitaBlu does is that it supports a very, very natural and normal function of the body. It just puts more stem cells in the bloodstream. Your body will use these stem cells in the best way that the body can use them, with the intelligence that your body has. Just trust your body, it will use them well. You don't really have to go further than that. Give it a trial, you will see, and you can tell me later on when I come back to Malaysia to have more durian. If we take RevitaBlu every day, can I deplete the bone marrow? Will it weaken my bones? There are many ways to answer that question. The answer is a resounding no. It will not happen. I can understand where the question is coming from. If you start to stimulate something, can we suddenly create a problem? And the ability of the body, of the bone marrow to maintain itself is impressive. Let me briefly describe how things work in the bone marrow to give you a sense here of how the answer is a very strong no. So you see right here the structure of the bone. I'm showing this just to show that the bone has a solid structure which is very different from the soft structure of the bone. These are completely different. It's like your brain into your skull. If you think too much, you're not going to thin your skull. It doesn't matter. They're completely two different parts. They don't work together. One is just a housing for the other. And as you are young, most of the marrow is red marrow right there, and it's slowly turning to yellow marrow as we age. So as we get older, most of the marrow is transformed, and that's the reason why we have fewer and fewer stem cells in circulation. It's that simple. It's normal physiology. Now, in the bone marrow, or let's say in nature, stem cells or cells divide in a process called symmetrical cellular division. So you get one strand of DNA that goes in each daughter cell, one new DNA copy that goes in each daughter cell, so you get two identical daughter cells. This is everywhere in life. But in the bone marrow, what is happening is different. It's called asymmetrical cellular division. You get the original DNA going into one cell, this one stays in the bone marrow, and the two copies go into another cell, that one is released in the bloodstream. And it is done so that as you release stem cells as part of your natural process of life, of being alive, then you don't have in your bone marrow a copy of the original and a copy of the copy, a copy of the copy of the copy, which would be like taking a piece of paper, photocopying on a copy machine, and then after 20 copies, you can't read what you have. There's a degradation that comes from that process. To prevent this, you've got a process in the bone marrow that retains your original DNA. The reason why I'm saying this is that anytime you release the stem cells in the blood, a sister cell was left in the bone marrow. So if you release 5 million stem cells, you're not missing 5 million stem cells. It just maintained itself. A more simple way of explaining how this will not be a problem, we can also talk about real life. Exercise, strong exercise will trigger the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. It's significant. It will be a significant increase in the number of stem cells in circulation. So can we say that athletes one day are walking around and they fall down to the ground dead because they ran out of stem cells? It does not happen. Athletes, if anything, are healthier. There is absolutely no problem in supporting the natural role of stem cells from the bone marrow. Okay, can I get side effects, and what happens if I stop taking RevitaBlu? There is one big side effect of taking RevitaBlu is that you could be happier. So if you like being grumpy, try to avoid taking RevitaBlu. Other than that, there's no side effect. It's just a flu. I'm saying this because a number of years ago, I was talking with somebody with a previous formula that had the same benefits. And this fellow says, you know, I've been taking this product now for 6 months and I'm not sure if I see anything. So I said, really? You don't see any benefit whatsoever? He said, I really don't know if I'm seeing something. I said, okay. Like, do you sleep better? Maybe. Do you feel better? Well, he said, I'm in a much better mood, but if that's the benefit, then my ex-wife should pay for the product. So it could be a side effect. What happens if I stop using RevitaBlu? The only thing that can happen if you stop using RevitaBlu is the same thing that happens if you stop using Reserve, if you stop doing exercise, if you stop having a good diet, is that you will lose the benefit of having the good diet. Nothing will happen to you. Nobody goes to withdrawal. There's nothing of this. We have not seen any of this over the past, 17, 18 years of development of this whole science. The only thing is that if you get benefits by doing it, then you suddenly don't have these benefits. What is the best time to take RevitaBlu and how can I take too much? Honestly, when I started, we had this idea that it might be better without food. It might be better in the morning so that you have the rest of the day to have an effect. People thought when stem cell, the repair process is more at night, so it's probably better to take it before you go to bed. But as all the science is being revealed, this repair process takes a number of days. You release stem cells, they circulate, they migrate, they multiply, they do all their work. It's a number of days. There's no relationship as to when you take the product and the benefits that will slowly develop over time. So you can take it anytime that it suits you. Can I take too much? A number of years ago, I decided to give it a test. What will happen if I take too much? So I take the equivalent of 9 stick packs a day for about 4 years. And the only thing that happens, I get a third eye that started to grow in the back. Nothing happened. I just traveled tremendously, and I don't really feel jet lags. I don't have any problem from all this traveling. So I don't know if that's what it was, but all I can say is that there was nothing to notice other than just staying healthy through all this traveling. At what age can one take RevitaBlu? When all of this concept started, again 15 years ago, my thought that there's so many things where I've been proven wrong in all this science that has been both humbling and actually fairly interesting to see how all of this developed, because that's how true discoveries are. You don't discover what you expect. You discover the unexpected most of the time. So I thought, since people who are young have a lot of stem cells, then we should not really see benefits in children. Let's say people below 20 years old, let's say. And then given that people older than, let's say, 80 years old or 80 years young don't have a whole lot of stem cells, they still have them, but it's much fewer, then probably we won't see a lot of benefit. You know, if you have 1 million and you double them, you get 2 million. But if you have 2 and you double them and you get 4, it's not a big deal of an increase. So I thought we might not see the same kind of benefits in older people. All I can say after 15 years is that I have seen absolutely no relationship whatsoever between age and the benefits that people have reported. We've seen benefits in people at 95 years old and more, and we've seen people in very, very young, benefits in very young children. Generally speaking, we don't have studies that have been done with children, so we don't recommend, we don't promote, we don't target children. All I'm saying here is that there's no problem, it's just the food. So I will simply say, in terms of with regard to age, at any point in time, if you increase the number of stem cells in your circulation, you simply give that edge to your body to be the best that it can. And it's really, I think, the motto, the golden rule to remember about RevitaBlu. It's just giving your body the edge that it needs to be the best that it can. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I hope it was clear and interesting. Thank you so much.